just kind of building on the video that I dropped in yesterday, I see three particular main problems, sort of root problems or core problems in the church. While I still think we are a functional body and every congregation differs in the way that they meet and how they function and what their spiritual depth is, I see three problems that are pretty much across the board. Our little church struggles with some of this. And as much as I am trying not to let it affect the way that I operate and do ministry, it's really hard. So here they are. The first one that I've got is, and I think this is a biggie right now, just an instant one, is that the church is really distracted. We're worried about, can we get services back to normal? How many people can fit in? What are the rules? What are the regulations? Are we going to get sued or not? Do we have to wear masks or can we not wear masks? Do the people working for the church have to wear them but not the congregation coming in? Or do we have people distanced far enough? And I think there are so many issues that are surrounding or have been brought to the forefront by this pandemic that a lot of our energy and time, a lot of our money and effort is being put into, can we get things back to normal? And I think the reality of it is that things are not going to go back to normal. I'm also not sure that we want them to go back to normal. There are huge opportunities over the last year that we have simply not taken advantage of because of the way people feel, because of how down they are, discouraged or whatever. I think we preach a lot of feel-good sermons instead of taking on the issues of the day. And while we're distracted with all this pandemic stuff, culturally, we're going into the toilet. The things that I talked about yesterday, just the gender bending stuff, all of the sexual orientation or identity, how many genders are there, the political things that we're getting into. We spent 4 years listening to people say that we're going to get into wars, that we can't trust a president with a particular president, DT, with the nuclear, the nuclear briefcase or whatever they call it, the football. And in those 4 years, we had no new wars. We had troop withdrawals. We had awesome things happening. And all of a sudden, we see a real quick turn where we've got Russia on one front with the Crimea and Ukraine. And then we've got China on the other side with Taiwan. And both of them seem really intent on threatening us. The other thing that I don't think we are paying attention to as a church is I know that sounds political, so let me just stop for a second because I'm not trying to make this political. These are church issues, and I don't know that we should be preaching about these, but we should be educating our congregation. What does it mean if we get into a shooting war with the Russians? What does it mean for the church if we get into an actual war with China? One of the things that I saw the other day is that China has factories that are making sort of one-use drones, and they're capable of carrying everything from small munitions to cameras to small yield nuclear devices, and it's costing China $10 a piece to make these drones. They've got thousands of them. The last number that was reported on this website that I was looking at, Marfugel News if you want to see it, but the last thing that was reported is they had 10,000 of them integrated into their military. And if we were in a war, a bunch of these things they've made transatlantic. And they wouldn't send soldiers to invade us. They would just send drones over the country. We've been dealing with a lot of fear from this pandemic. And I think that's a whole nother issue that we'll get into, but can you imagine what kind of panic and fear there's going to be in our country if all of a sudden we have drones by the hundreds or thousands flying over the country, dropping bombs? It could look a lot like World War II with Germany and England as they were carpet bombing each other, except there aren't people in the air to shoot down. There are just empty drones that are dropping their munitions or dive bombing on it, and they don't even care if they come back because they're so cheap they're throwaway. how does that impact the church? And I think we need to not be so focused on the one particular thing of getting things back to normal, because I'm not sure they're going to go back to normal. A second problem that I see is, besides that being a distraction and the preaching aimed at just making people feel good instead of getting the church ready for what's coming, the second thing that I see is that we are simply becoming too tolerant. We're tolerating everything in the church. I've got a friend whose child just came out as gay and moved in with somebody of the same sex. And when they sat down and talked with him, to their credit, they did. But when they sat down and talked with him, the kid said, I don't understand why you have a problem with this. And it's a kid that's grown up in the church. And so I just think that all the cultural things that are coming our way, and let me, if you've got ideas of the specific cultural things, I see all of the family-oriented things, the gender-oriented things, the weakening of our country and our freedoms I see that as a spiritual issue. I see the potential for another world war as a spiritual issue for the church. If you have specific issues, I would love for you to just drop them in comments, or send them to me in an email or a text. And then let me get into this other thing. But the too tolerant part of it, I think we don't want to rock the boat. And the reality of it is that it's hard for a pastor in a large church not to be very tolerant of all the different cultural views that are out there. And I think it is, okay, why? Well, simply because I think you worry about paying the bills, paying staff, keeping programs going, and putting butts in the seats more than we do about accomplishing the mission that Christ gave us, which is to go out into the world, make disciples, baptize them, and teach them to obey Christ and all the things that he taught us. And so I think we've become tolerant because we don't want to lose people, because our overhead is so high, because the cost of just keeping things running requires us to have people to run programs, and money to deal with them, and kids to put into them, and women and men to put into programs, and Sunday school teachers and small group leaders, and it just goes on and on. And part of it for a big church is that it's grown like that. Now, I think the same thing is true, that it's easy to become very tolerant if you're a very small church as well. And that's simply because you know everybody intimately. And somebody who has a different opinion that is perhaps anti-biblical, it's hard then to confront them and approach them without somewhat modifying it so that you don't offend a good friend. I don't know about churches in the middle that much. I haven't been in that many churches in the middle, but I would assume there is some of both things for that. For a church that's in that 150 to 400 size, that the pastor probably has a little more insulated group of friends, elders, support people, but that as you spread out, then they go to more acquaintances, and then church members that they don't really know well. Maybe they know them by a first name. Maybe they say, "Hey, how's it going?" because they can't remember a name. But I think the tolerance level of the church has got to change. We are so worried about offending people that we're no longer actually presenting a clear call to the gospel. The third thing that I see in this, and this one's going to be a little bit touchy, and I will tell you that I struggle with this some myself, but I think the people in our pews or in our chairs, the congregations, are suffering from a lack of knowledge. And it comes back to the pastors being afraid to speak out. And maybe it doesn't need to happen on a Sunday morning in a service, but at some place, pastors in a church have to be willing to talk to the people in the congregation and to confront some of these issues, and frankly to give creative ways of interacting with people. I like to have fun with it, Let me just throw something out here. I have people out here that are very into the climate change thing, the global warming thing, and they'll ask, do you believe in global climate change? And I'll say, yes, absolutely, I do, and that's true if that surprises you. But what I don't really believe in is man-made global warming or cooling. What I do think is going to happen is that when Jesus comes back, the earth is going to be destroyed by fire, and climate change and global warming are a very real reality, and we need to be able to escape the planet to survive it. Now, I know you can already probably see where I'm going with this, but people who aren't Christians or who haven't thought it through, they say, really? So you mean like going to Mars and establishing a colony there? And I say, no, I believe we need to escape into an entirely different dimension. It's not in this universe at all, but it's a place that the Bible calls heaven. And it's where God and the angelic beings exist. And they're going to be safe from the climate change and everything that happens. And we all can escape the global climate change that's happening. And so, you see that? I mean, if you just think about stuff, there are kind of fun ways to be able to jump into these conversations with people. Now, it ticks some people off, but the Apostle Paul says that when we share the gospel, it's either going to be a sweet smell to people, or it's going to be the stink of death. And I think that's another thing that the church has got to come to grips with, is not everybody's going to like us. We have spent so many decades doing the seeker-friendly churches where what we try to do is make non-Christians comfortable and feel good, and we hope we slip a little gospel in, and it is effective to some degree. It brings a lot of people in, and a lot of people say the sinner's prayer, they get baptized, my preference, but they come in, but then they stay shallow because nothing ever takes on depth. Nothing ever gets into the core issues of our life today. So let me leave you with one thought on this. I know I'm probably running this a little longer than I want to, but I think that God is letting evil pervade everything. It is everywhere. Good is being called evil, and evil is being called good, and our culture is going down the toilet right now. But I think God is letting this happen just to show the church who's with him and who's not. And I think if you evaluate the things based on a biblical standard, everything from abortion to how many genders there are to should we be trying to start wars, and how do you stop that, or how do you pray about that as a church, evaluate those things biblically, and then I think we have a chance. But it's one of the things that I see happening in the church today. So I'm going to let you go. We'll see you later, Andy.